Okay, good afternoon, YouTube. Welcome back to Fat Cat Collections. Gonna do another reaction video today, and this is so I'm gonna try a little bit different format. We're not really a different format. This is just basically not gonna be live. So feel free to comment and let me know your thoughts. So today I'm gonna be reacting to another time teller video. You folks know I'm not a big fan, but he does have a very successful channel, of course, and it just makes me just makes me cringe whenever he opens his mouth and says the word Invicta. So I'm going back to a lot of these videos because I want to, I don't know, just kind of critique a lot of what these guys are saying about these different watch brands. That doesn't necessarily mean just Invicta. It could be a Rolex. It could be any brand that these self-proclaimed watch experts want to lie about. So let's begin here.
Time teller. So guys, when it comes to watch collecting, there's no shortage of opinions, preferences, point of view, perspectives, just a whole bunch of diverse interests within this interest, right? People have preferences when it comes to watchmakers, when it comes to materials used, when it comes to complications, regions. Some people really want to focus on Japanese watches. Some people.
I don't know if I agree with that. Naturally, you're going to have a lot of people who are he's correct in my, remember these are my opinions, so he's correct in saying there's lots of diverse tastes, but that's with anything, right? There's people who like Sony over Pioneer, and there's always going to be different preferences, right? But when it comes to materials, there's not really, he mentioned there's a difference in materials. There's not really a huge difference in materials across watch brands and makes, any styles or whatnot, right? You basically have stainless steel, you have 904, and then you have precious metals. Sure, you're going to find some sterling silver watches out there. They're rare. You're definitely going to find some gold watches. They start getting involved in gemstones and crusted. But generally, the materials, what do you got? You got stainless steel, 904 stainless, 316 stainless. Let me go back. Strike it. 316 stainless, 904 stainless, gold, sterling silver, again rare, tungsten, and then you start having like materials that are, I don't know if you get a ceramic watch, if it's full ceramic, or if it's like stainless steel that's been coated with a ceramic coating. I don't necessarily think that all links are ceramic, but I'm not privy to every single watch out there. I shouldn't say not privy. I don't know about every single watch brand out there, although I have seen quite a bit. Now you get a lot of carbon watches coming out, so yeah, there's different types of material, but I don't necessarily know if somebody's going to turn around and be like, oh, I only wear carbon watches. You might have people maybe prefer a leather strap, but my experience when it comes to people I've talked to over the last decade is that people generally who like me, I'm more of a bracelet guy, but sometimes I want to wear a leather band. Sometimes I go with a rubber strap. So it just kind of depends. And again, I say it all the time. Nice thing about affordable watches, you can afford to have a huge collection, right? So
people really love German watches. Some people only want Swiss watches, and some people, are pretty diverse with their.
And that's kind of a little bit of a delusional thought. If you only want a German watch, there's nothing wrong with saying I only want Swiss watches, I only want German watches, and give me a reason for why, right? Or if somebody just says that's just what I like, that's fine. There's no problem. Buy what makes you happy. Buy what you like. But I'd really like to know, like, why would you prefer a German watch over a Chinese watch? Why do you prefer Swiss made over something that isn't, right? These are just kind of labels that really don't mean anything anymore. So my question to somebody would be, again, what is your rationale for only wanting a German watch? If you're like, I want to support the German economy, then fantastic. That's a very valid reason. But don't make it about quality, because I'll knock you right down with that. The argument just, it isn't there.
Sampling in their watch box. For me, I don't really pay too much attention to manufacture or complication. I just think
that's completely wrong. He pays a lot of attention to manufacturer. This guy only recommends brands that he's affiliated with, that you'll find on his website. So not true at all. He plays that brands play a huge role in him, and there's nothing wrong with him liking specific brands. But what this guy does is he pushes his brands that maybe not all brands. I don't know if he's affiliated with Casio, but he loves Casio. We've seen this, these videos before, but in Seiko. But he will make he always makes it about quality with the brands he doesn't like. Like, yeah, he'll poke fun at the Invicta fanboys and all this stuff, but generally he kind of makes it about quality and not about just taste, right? So, all right, continue on.
I think if the watch is cool, I'll buy it, regardless of like where it came from. And I'm sure a lot of you guys kind of
That's not true. He cares a lot about where it came from.
resonate with that. But
Well, I shouldn't say. I'm actually wrong in that because he does wear Casio and and Seiko and brands like that, right? So I strike it from the record. I apologize.
I myself am very outspoken when it comes to my opinions, my perspective, my
There's a difference between being outspoken and straight up being offensive and rude. And again, remember when somebody says Invictas are shit, right? I'm not. I don't necessarily take offense to that, but I do fire back when somebody starts trying to clown somebody for wearing, like, saying that they look ridiculous, or it's like a came out of a cereal box. Like, you're trying to insult the wearer with something like that. So that's not being outspoken. That's just being a dickhead.
Preferences when it comes to watch collecting and various specific watches. But maybe, just maybe, I've missed something when it comes to a certain watchmaker. Now, I've said I'm never wrong, and I stand by that. But was I wrong about Invicta? You see, a while back, I reviewed their Pro Diver, and I actually went above and beyond and compared it to my Submariner, and people to this day complain about that comparison. They say it's not fair. I didn't give the Invicta a fair shake. Now,
I've watched this video in the past. I'd have to go back to it. Maybe I'll do another reaction video to that one there. But he will never give Invicta a fair shake because he hates the brand. So that's not, I've done side-by-side comparisons, not with a Rolex in front of me before. But again, let's not. I won't harp about this anymore, at least in this video.
if you watch that episode with an open mind, you'll see that the Invicta actually was, pretty reasonably solid, especially for the price. It's just, it's not a Submariner. And I don't think that's an unreasonable comparison or statement, because that Pro Diver was literally designed essentially as a one-to-one of a Rolex Submariner. So
I'm just not a little confused when he's like, it's a one-to-one, but you can see the Invicta here is like, doesn't have the pip. It's very close, don't get me wrong, but yeah, they've made an affordable $60 NH35 driven, amazing timepiece. Like, yeah, I would expect there would be insane quality differences between that. And I know some folks, when I say a Rolex is 10 grand or pick a number, remember when I pick the price of a Rolex, they're all over the place, right? So when I just say 10 grand, just give me a little bit of leeway there. I know some Rolexes are 20, some are 30. There's all different price points, but it's safe to assume Submariner, 10 grand, right? So I would think that the differences would be insane, but they never are.
So, okay, I didn't give Invicta a fair shake. Let's revisit Invicta. So I don't know about you, but when I think of Invicta, I get kind of nervous because I immediately associate that brand name with like these huge monstrosities, right? But surely if that Pro Diver was kind of a more palatable take on a watch, there must be another one. Like Invicta.
So Invicta makes a lot of different watches. Some might consider this watch that's on the screen here a monstrosity. I like it. I mean, I like the Submariner. I like this watch. So, I don't think one should ever really refer to things that, I don't know, I'm different. People are going to do what they're going to do. But I feel like if I don't like something, I generally am not just going to be like, oh my God, who would wear that? Like my tastes are superior to everyone else's. I'm no better than anybody else, and nobody's better than me. And my tastes are no better than anybody else's, and neither, and likewise, right? Vice versa. So I think that for me to look at this watch, if I didn't like it and just be like, wow, that's just not my style, I'd be like, that's very over the top. It's very big, it's very loud, very flashy. There's other ways you could describe things you're not into than just jumping to calling it a monstrosity. That's not really a real nice way to describe it, because there's different strokes for different folks. Everybody likes something different. And so I just don't, again, people like this think that their opinions are superior and that they're correct, and they're just not.
Invicta can't only produce these enormous, grotesque hunks of material on your wrist.
Yeah, see, so again, calling them grotesque. Yeah, I know that it's okay. Like, we have the freedom of speech he can say that, but do you have to, right? I mean, I think that his face is grotesque, right? I think that his decor is grotesque, but I don't necessarily would never say that unless he wants to poke fun at things that you guys like and I like. So I think that, those who live in glass houses should not throw stones. I don't think that this is a guy that I would ever take any kind of style advice from. I'm not trying to be mean. I guess I am trying to be a little bit mean, but again, and some might say that about me as well. So it doesn't really matter. People are going to buy what they like and buy what makes them happy, but Invicta makes a whole bunch of watches. You have watches that are very homage watches that are straight up copies of other brands. You have their own designs. Many of them are own designs, and then more of their own designs that are just more reasonable. So, I just don't see the need in really, calling something that somebody else may like, ugly. Like, I'm sure he wouldn't go up on the street and say that somebody, I'm not trying to play Mr. Tough Guy here, but I like to see him go up to the big bouncer that they always claim is the only ones who wear this and say, dude, your watch is ugly. Like, that's not, they just don't do this in public.
They can't all be these like crazy hockey pucks. There's got to be something out there that's a bit more palatable, like the Invicta Pro Diver, and I have it right here, so I have pretty high hopes.
Yeah, I mean, this is not difficult. Like, he acts like he had to really scour the internet to find something more palatable for his taste. There's thousands of watches Invicta makes that are reasonable. I mean, you didn't have to look very hard to find just a basic, normal, traditional watch.
Hopes. Maybe I've truly been harsh to Invicta.
This is strictly just to get views, and this is what sucks about YouTube is that the people who are looking for a watch and say, hey, I've heard about Invicta, let me check it out. They're going to find this guy talking shit about Invicta and then maybe not buy it. I know that's the world we live in, but, why not just give it an honest, fair shake, right? Maybe he will, but...
Let's take a look. So... Oh, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore, actually. It is 3:27 p.m. Let's get down to business. All jokes aside, here in this box, sent
all jokes aside, let's see how many more he makes.
To me by a viewer is, I believe this also has the Pro Diver name. It's the reference number 29816. This has gotta be a joke because, well, let's just jump into the dimensions and everything. 51.6 millimeters. 61.8 millimeter.
This guy acts like he's never seen an Invicta before. Like, this is the authentic. This is where these guys just lack any kind of authenticity. Like, they're just not authentic. He's like, oh, this has got to be a joke. Like, he's never seen the giant Invictas. Like, this is not his first Invicta video. It's not the first time he's seen the big watches. He just stated they make monstrosities. So why would this size be of any kind of shock to you? It's just beyond me. I mean, so this watch here, not one that I would typically buy. Nothing wrong with it. It's just a little kind of plain Jane for what Invicta makes. I think these are the kind of watches Invicta makes that don't do very well. This level of quality is not what I consider, on par with brands like Oceaniva and even Aragon and so, there's many other brands. This is more their entry-level watch. These ones I don't know if it has screw-down crown and function pushers. Again, not a bad watch. We don't know what this costs, but probably in the $100 price range. Not a bad watch, but not my personal taste. But again, if you're looking for the good quality Invictas, you generally want to go with the reserve. And a lot of times it's hard to figure out which ones are reserve or not.
Lug to lug, 20.2 millimeters thick, and it weighs 314 grams. So with these dimensions, right, and that weight, it must be to accommodate, like, a mechanical movement and a pretty robust water resistance rating. No.
See, no, he's just painting the picture now where he's planting seeds and then he's going to harvest the seeds. Where he's like, you would think with a big case that they would be its own movement. And there's so many brands out there. Most watches do not make movements for the actual watch. When you look at a watch like a Rolex, their watch and movements are made, to the best of my knowledge, for the particular watch. That's something that when you look at a luxury brand, and I've never opened the back of a luxury brand, so to give me a little bit of leeway here. But generally, I would think that when Rolex puts a movement in their watch, that movement was designed for the watch. So it's a married unit, right? Whereas like Invicta, they basically outsource their movements like thousands of other brands. So you're usually going to find an adapter ring of some sort in there to keep the movement centered on the watch. And so when you open up a big watch like this, no matter if it's a Seiko NH35 automatic or one of the other NH series or a Valjoux, whatever it may be, they don't make movements to fit 60mm watches. Any watch that's oversized generally is going to have an adapter ring. This is nothing new. This is, you know, you can even look at a well-respected brand like Longines. If you look at some of the videos I just did recently, like they use adapter rings as well. Quartz movement, $700. Not all their watches are quartz, mind you. But again, this is nothing specific to Invicta. This is pretty much every watch brand, right? So again, depth rating, you know, the size of a watch has nothing to do with depth rating. This is a very affordable Invicta. Just be very clear.
Nope, neither, actually. This is quartz. Pretty basic quartz chronograph with a really bizarre layout we're going to talk.
Quartz watches are basic, right? And if you want accuracy, this quartz is more accurate than any Rolex ever made, right? So just as long as it's working properly, right? And it usually is. Quartz is a simple movement. So again, you know, why is this any different than Longines, which this guy would give Longines a great praise, right? It'd just say, a great watch brand, right? Longines respected, right? Well, if you get a quartz Longines, what is the difference? It's still a quartz watch.
Talk about in a moment, and it has a fairly anemic water resistance rating at 100 meters. Now, I'm not saying 100 meters is not enough water resistance.
Absolutely, 100 meters is more than you need in a watch unless you're a diver.
I'm saying that for a watch that's 51.6 by 61.8 by 20.2, it should, you'd think it'd be like above 500 meter water resistance.
No, only an idiot would think that. Like, that's like saying that, oh, that dude weighs 500 pounds, so he must be super strong. Like, that's not the case, you know? I mean, like, let's just use this example. Like, this guy's a pretty fat dude, right? He's an overweight guy. If you look at this guy and say, oh, this guy must be able to eat, like, you know, like 50 cheeseburgers, that's not the case. Just because something is big doesn't mean you can't make assumptions about a size of a person on their diet and how they eat. Granted, there, you know, again, some people will come back to me and be like, that's not true. People who are fat overeat. There's genetics play a big role in weight, right? Size and how your body metabolizes food. Same thing with a watch. Like, they made the watch to have a wrist presence to be big. They gave it a basic level of water resistance. This is not like, one should not look at this watch and make any kind of assumptions about it, right? This is ridiculous. This is just him trying to knock the watch.
It's rating, but yeah, this doesn't even have a threaded crown, guys. So when we take a look at the sides of the case, you will see that the pushers do have like a serrated kind of crown, almost, you know, think Daytona, like threaded pushers. Wow. No, those.
Okay, well, check it out. This beautiful Citizen watch, right? My very well-respected brand. People love Citizen, right? Watch community loves Citizen. This doesn't have screw-down function pushers. These are just push-pull. So what Invicta will do a lot of times with their watches is that, and this is a great watch. Why is it okay for this to have push-pull, to have a push-in function pushers, non-screw-down, and a watch like Invicta is a piece of shit for it? What I mean, this is where they just make excuses for what they like and kind of pick on this watch. It's not really fair. A company will put screw-down crown and function pushers depending on what kind of depth rating they want to give it. Invicta will, a lot of times on their basic watches, and this can be said for many brands, use kind of generic parts. So this function pusher, these are relatively generic function pushers that you could probably find on many of their watches. It just depends on what watch you're buying with Invicta.
Those are just for show. The crown doesn't thread. This is really bizarre. It has a time.
It's not bizarre. This is acting. You're not going to win a Grammy, dude. Like, this is acting. It's very bizarre. Like, I've never seen this before. There's so many friggin' watches that don't have screw-down function pusher and crowns that have a faux function pusher, screw-down function pushers, right? That came out wrong. But you know what I mean, right? There's also watches that have fake chronographs. Like this watch here, is this even a chronograph? It looks like a chronograph. Sometimes they'll have a chronograph look and it'll just be like a date wheel or a secondhand. So again, this is a very affordable basic watch here.
Timing bezel. It has a pro diver name according to the website. This is not a dive watch. Now,
okay, so a dive watch, that is subjective. Again, a traditional dive watch depends on how much you're diving. You can put this on your wrist and dive down 5 feet. It's not going to be a problem. 100 meters is what the rating is. So any watch that has a water resistance can potentially be a dive watch. It just depends on how deep you're going. You guys know that. This is acting. Again, this guy's not going to win any kind of awards here. You're not going to win an Emmy or whatever the fuck the award is. This is just the way they designed the watch. This can be said for thousands of watches out there.
Speaking.
Now, one thing I will agree on Invicta uses their names a lot, like reuses. So this is not when I think of Pro Diver, I think of Submariner Homage by Invicta. But they use the Pro Diver name on all kinds of watches that look like this, and it's like, all right, well, which one is the Pro Diver? So, yeah, they need to stop like reusing names.
Speaking of those pushers and the bizarre chronograph layout, when I first unboxed this
What is bizarre about the chronograph layout?
watch, I thought the chronograph complication was broken. And I actually sent a message to the person who sent this watch to me, and I was like, hey, was the watch damaged when he sent it to me? And ends up the watch was not defective, it was not damaged. It's that that chronograph hand that was moving across the dial was actually just the second hand. Okay, I made a whole episode describing what a chronograph is, because believe it or not, a lot of people think that the chronograph hand is the second hand, and they're like, how come when I press a button the second hand stops? I don't.
Okay, totally depends on the movement. So there are watches where the second hand like a bull of a precisionist. That watch, you'll see the second hand moving, tracking standard seconds. When you put in chronograph mode, it jumps into a chronograph second hand timekeeping portion of the watch, right? If that came out right. But generally, it depends on the movement. If you look at, for instance, a lot of, and he is right that a lot of quartz chronograph movements, generally your large second hand is for tracking time. And all a chronograph is a stopwatch. That's all it is. Chronographs are not my favorite watches. I'd prefer to always have a basic, simple dial. Time of day. That's it. I don't need anything more than that. I don't need date. I don't need anything else. But they are popular, right? And I get that. But generally, the second hand does stay stationary on most watches, especially if it's going to be a quartz watch. And it could even be with a lot of automatics. But the point is that this is not unique to this watch. Now, sometimes they do make a watch look like a chronograph where, again, like I mentioned earlier, it's not actually a chronograph. It's kind of like a fake chronograph. Gives you the look, but it's not actually a chronograph. I'm not sure about this one, but this is like acting like Invicta's doing something weird like I've never seen before. This is so common.
Understand. Watch that episode. Check out the comments. You'd be surprised how many people truly enter the hobby without a full understanding of what a chronograph is, and that's all.
You don't need a full understanding, right? You just don't. The only reason to know what a chronograph is, if you like the way a chronograph looks on a watch, is just make sure you don't have the chronograph active. If it's a quartz watch or even an automatic, on a quartz watch, you're going to run down your battery. So again, the only reason you don't need to like research this before getting into the hobby, like you could just buy the fucking watch you like. If it calls to you and you're like, dude, I can see myself wearing that. I like it. Buy it, put it on your wrist, and then when you find your battery's dead in 6 months, be like, why did my battery die? Then you'll find you probably had the chronograph active, right? These people act like this is like that we're writing a medical research paper. It's just so fucking
awesome. I didn't know what a chronograph was when I first learned about watches. So anyway.
Yeah, and you went on that long mission of trying to figure it out, and in 10 seconds you figured it out by Googling it.
That is actually a second hand. So when I was pressing the pushers, and I was like trying to figure out why the chronograph hand wasn't stopping, that's the second hand. The chronograph has actually been relegated to a sub-dial, which is very weird. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, typically I will agree with that. I'm sure lots of watches do it, but that would make more sense, honestly, than having the second hand. I wish more watches movements work that way, because traditionally people think of the second hand as just being a second hand. That's why a lot of people make the mistake of activating the chronograph thinking that's the second hand when they're really just tracking time. You're going to kill your battery. So I think it makes more sense to have the second hand be the time-telling second hand, pun intended, and just have one of the subdials be the chronograph second hand. It just depends on the movement, how they do it. It's not like weird or anything like that. It's just it's not typical. I'll agree.
And essentially, depending on where the hour and minute hand are on the watch, it makes the chronograph complication totally obscured. Excuse me, and it makes it unusable. You can't.
It's not unusable. Like, dude, we're looking right at it. You can use it. Like, they act like we're. He's making the argument that because the chronograph second hand is in a subdial, that large second hand, like it's obstructing it. You can't see it. Like we can see it right here, dude. Like absolutely, if your hour hand is thicker and your minute hand's gonna be in that section, like it might be a little bit blocked, but you can still use it. This is not like you have the whole watch. I can't read it anymore. This is just ridiculous.
Use that chronograph complication for large swaths of the day. And even if
Who's using the chronograph for large swaths of the day anyway? Most people who have a chronograph don't even use it. I mean, I'm speaking for me personally and many people. Like, what are you timing? Like, the only time I've ever really used a chronograph is if I, did it on my phone and I'm like, all right, I'm going to take a break. And I set my chronograph on to track my time. But then most time I just look at the time and then go back to work when it's like 15 minutes after, right? So this is just ridiculous.
If it wasn't obscured for large portions of the day, there's no second markers.
Again, these guys make mountains out of molehills. I don't know how they get through life.
On that chronograph subdial, so it really wouldn't even be an accurate chronograph at all.
Oh,
now, this watch does utilize an integrated bracelet system, and it's affixed by like flathead screws.
What do you mean an integrated bracelet system? It's a bracelet. It's like thousands of other watches.
So it's like super industrial, and it
is industrial. It does have an industrial look.
It's crazy because
it's not crazy. It's a fucking watch, dude.
On the surface, you'd think this watch is like overbuilt, right? Wow, 314 grams, 20.2 millimeters thick, 61.8 millimeter lug to lug, flathead screw.
All right, so it is overbuilt. It's a big watch. The only reason it's built like that is because people want a big watch. That's the only reason. They're not advertising this as like, hey, this is the most durable watch on earth. That's why we use these materials. When you look at something like for instance, the Deep Sea by Rolex, something like that. Like, they're making that watch specifically to go down to a certain depth rating, so they have to beef up the crystal and maybe beef up the stainless, or not even necessarily even the stainless. But there's reasons on why a watch might be bigger in order to withstand a certain depth rating. But at the end of the day, the only reason to make a watch bigger is because people want a bigger watch. They know there's a market for it, and you want a bigger wrist presence. That's it. There's no deep thought process that has to go on here. It is a durable watch. This watch, I'm not going to get into specifications yet. We'll wait till he jumps into that, if he does. But this watch is built like every other watch out there.
Screwdrivers.
With some exceptions.
The integrated bracelet. Dude, it's all show, man. It has the flimsiest clasp I've ever felt.
Lie. That's a complete lie to say that's the flimsiest clasp he's ever felt. This watch, even being an entry-level Invicta, will smoke a 80s Seiko, or a lot of the Seikos that he's even reviewed himself. That's a complete lie. Now, they might have hollow center links. It might feel a little lighter weight, but this is 316 stainless steel. That's what Invicta uses. This is a very nice quality bracelet. You can see the fit and finishing on this. The links go together. There's no crazy, like, misaligned gaps. This is a nice bracelet. And this watch is probably under $100.
On a watch. And it totally... It confuses me because the bracelet and the watch head are incredibly heavy and big, and then the clasp is like very flimsy and weak, and it does not instill confidence, in my opinion. So
that's a complete lie. That's a complete lie. The clasp on that watch is very similar to many watches I have in the collection. In all honesty, that watch looked like it was a milled clasp, which is a nicer quality than your stamped clasp. How can we say that that's flimsy when this same guy will review a watch with a basic, very entry-level stamped clasp, which is arguably does feel kind of flimsy compared to a milled clasp, but none of these are falling off your wrist. There is nothing to worry about, and this guy is just making that up, that he's worried about this watch. Like, what is it going to just crumble off your fucking wrist? This is where guys are planting seeds of doubt to dissuade you from giving this watch brand a chance.
So now we're going to jump into the pros and cons, okay? I've
only heard cons.
Given you my opinion about this watch, but it is a time teller review, so I have to give you the pros and cons. This is going to be a struggle, okay? But the pros, one pro, you could probably beat someone to death with it if you had to. So there's...
Oh, give me a break, dude. I mean, these guys are like children. They're so friggin' dramatic. You could beat someone. Obviously, this guy ever thrown a punch? Like, you don't slap somebody with your wrist. You throw a proper punch. Like, what the fuck is he even talking about?
I mean, there's that. Moving on to the cons. It's enormous. It's gaudy. It's heavy. It's non-functional in any way.
Okay, so the cons. It's enormous, subjective. It's gaudy, subjective. It's heavy, subjective. Non-functional. Incorrect. The watch tells time. The chronograph functions. How is it non-functional?
As far as it being a diver or a chronograph.
False. The watch has got 100 meters of depth rating if you want to dive down to 100 meters. Now, Granted, when it comes to affordable watches, these are not pressure tested. Not a lot of watches are pressure tested. So if you're going to put the trust in this watch that'll support a depth rating of 100 meters, absolutely, it may or it may not, right? You only know until you put it to the test. But most people are not diving with their watches. I can assure you that I've never had a watch leak, other than one that was defective due to the back being cross-threaded on from the factory. It was an Invicta, and it was one of their nicer, what I would argue is a nicer level of quality, their Grand Diver. That's the only problem I've ever had with a watch. And yeah, it does suck that it was an Invicta. And yeah, a lot of the, haters are going to be like, yeah, see? But that's a very rare case. All the other Invictas that I have, they're probably close to 50 watches. I dunk, I swim with them, I get in the hot tub, I wear them in the shower. They've never had any problems. Remember, this is not rocket science. There's seals inside these watches, especially if you have a screw-down crown. In the event that you do not have a screw-down crown and function pushers, and a lot of brands will have a screw-down crown and non-screw-down function pushers, which I always think is kind of stupid, right? Because you're putting a stronger link with a weaker link. But these watches all have gaskets in them. And as long as those gaskets, this is not rocket science, folks. It's just a little rubber gasket on all these different moving parts. And if that gasket has been applied properly from the factory, then the watch is not going to leak. Fuck.
Push-pull crown with a fairly anemic water resistance rating for its size.
Okay, all Casio watches, all of them do not have. I've never seen a Casio watch like a G-Shock. I shouldn't say all, but I personally have never seen a G-Shock with screw-down crown and function pushers, yet they have water resistance. So why are we making excuse for those brands and not for this? So we don't have screw-down crown and function pushers, and this is a piece of dog shit, and you're not going to be able to do anything. You're not going to be able to dive with it or swim with it, but yet the Casio G-Shock, that's okay. Somehow that one you can do that with.
Has a cheap bracelet with an
Cheap bracelet, subjective. I totally disagree. His bracelet's totally nice as many other watches, as nice as any Seiko out there. That's for sure.
Even worse clasp and the offset date window. That's kind of the cherry on top. So
subjective. That is, he doesn't like the location of the date window. Why? I don't understand. The date window's normally maybe at the 3 o'clock position. So because it's at the 5, that's a big deal. I mean, this is ridiculous. Like, how do these guys get through their day with nitpicking everything?
All in all right, people love to complain about how I don't and didn't and haven't and just never will give Invicta a fair shake. But this
because he doesn't. I mean, this video, it's amazing that this guy actually is putting up this video. He's straight up lying to you watching this video. Everything he said here, most of it was subjective. And everything else he said was completely false. You can use the chronograph. The watch tells time and functions. You can put this watch in water, and as long as it's, again, I'm sure Invicta has many watches that fail the depth rating, right? But when you compare it to the number of watches that don't, it's minuscule. Now, I don't have that data, right? But the company is still in business. The company is very successful. And people don't buy one Invicta. They buy many. You think that everybody who buys an Invicta, like I said all the time, guys don't buy one. They buy multiple, right? So you think that guys who buy multiple Invictas just never decide to never dunk the watch in the water, right? I mean, if Invicta lied that their watches, you couldn't dive with them, and suddenly everybody who had an Invicta dunked it, you'd hear something about it. It's not the case. This is not rocket science. Water resistance in watches has been around for a very long time. It's not difficult.
This is a perfect example of what Invicta predominantly manufactures, okay?
False. So this is one of their entry-level watches. The little things he's complaining about here, again, most of which are subjective. If you go taking the Invicta Subaquanoma 5, the Grand Diver, the Bolt Zeus, what else? Any reserve level piece, there is a little bit difference in quality. I think a lot of times it just has to do with a little more, I'd say, I don't even want to say weight, but when I look at some of these entry-level Invictas like this watch, I do feel like there's a difference in quality. It is something I can feel. It just, the other ones feel more robust, right? But that's not to say this is not a great value and a bad watch.
So it's not like I'm just pulling this out of thin air. These are enormous, disgusting paperweights, and they're...
Again, going back to subjective, enormous, disgusting paperweights. He just can't help himself but to kind of go with the flow. And I'm sure he hates the brand, absolutely, but he's stating false information about the brand. Again, let's go into my check boxes now. What makes up a watch? Material? Is it stainless steel or is it not? This is stainless steel Probably 316. That's usually what Invicta makes on most of their watches, not all their watches, right? So we have stainless steel. We have a crystal, which most likely is flame fusion. That's something Invicta uses, right? Which is a very scratch-resistant type of material. We have a time-telling capability, right? I think on this watch, it may even have a milled clasp, although I don't really know. I mean, how is this watch garbage when you can honestly review a Seiko, what's one of the watches, or a Boulder watch? I reviewed Boulder watches. There's no difference in quality between a Boulder watch, which he will give rave reviews, and a watch like this that he's completely shitting on. Explain to me why this watch is a big, again, gaudy. Yeah, you can say that. You know, if you don't like it, sure, it is big. It is a large watch. May not be your style, but it's a nice quality watch for the money.
They're not even functional, and in my opinion, they don't look good, so they don't feel.
Again, I've heard nothing but subjective comments and lies when he is trying to do something about the mechanics or the quality.
Good, they don't look good. They're not functional. I don't know what the.
They're functional. How can one make a video like this and sit there with a straight? Well, we don't see his face right now, but how can one say they're not functional when he showed you that it is functional?
The appeal is, but guess what? There's different preferences and opinions in this hobby, so my opinion does not necessarily have to reflect yours, and it's not me speaking on your behalf if you happen to love these watches. I'm not making a comment about you either, okay?
When you comment on something that somebody likes, you are making a comment about you. I love when these passive-aggressive douchebags like this turn around and say, well, I'm not making fun of you. You know, remember, I've mentioned this many times in videos, when, like, in sales, one rule of sales is to never bash brands, right? You can have a personal feeling inside, that's fine, but you never want to bash a brand, because this is where common sense is just gone with some people like this. Common sense should tell a person that when you bash a brand that somebody may have purchased, and I don't just mean me, I mean lots of people, you are basically telling them that they don't know what they're doing, and that you're insulting their ability to make a decision. Doing so while lying about what you're reviewing. You know how you do a review? A review is a proper, honest review. Is somebody getting a product, talking about the features of the watch, which, let's face it, with watches, it's pretty much the same features most of the time. What is it made out of? What kind of crystal? What kind of movement? Does it have screw-down crown and function pushers? Crystal, did I mention that? Is it on, are they hollow links? And we can kind of go down the list. There's all kinds of little things that they do start to turn into subjective features, right? Oh, this has hollow end links. This has solid links. Well, maybe somebody prefers the hollow because it's a little bit lighter weight, right? So we can start to twist some of these features into subjective checkboxes. But most of all, the important thing is, what is it made out of? If you have a watch that's made of 316 stainless steel, that's most of the watch, right? After that, I would think, and this is something that doesn't come up very much anymore because fit and finishing. I get it if you looked at like an Invicta watch and like things were crooked, they didn't line up, you're putting on your wrist, it's falling, like I get it. But none of this happens. So it's absolutely, this is just a person who doesn't like the brand, who's planting seeds of doubt to prevent you from buying the brand. And remember, if you've already bought Invicta, he's insulting your ability to make a decision. Like, you're stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. You bought this Invicta. What a piece of shit, right? I mean, I don't understand why people don't understand that is offensive to people, right? Now, does that, like, make me so bent out of shape that I'm going to lose sleep over it? No, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck about this guy, right? It is fun to make a video about it. Mainly so you guys don't look at this, because people are very impressionable. People look at what's on YouTube. People get their news from social media, a lot of them nowadays. And so what I want you to do, and I don't want you to look at me and say, Phatkat said so, it's true. I want you to think about what I'm saying. When you go to the mall, right, just go get your hands on some watches. Easiest way to look at quality. Pick up a Seiko. Find an Invicta. An Invicta, the thing I don't like about them is that they have these different levels of quality. Absolutely, if you compare this Invicta with a Subaqua Noma 5, a Sea Hunter, there is going to be a difference in quality, right? And I think mainly because you might have a little bit, thinner links on it, whatever. But you're not going to pick up the inexpensive Invicta and be like, oh man, this is just a piece of shit now. It's not the difference, right? But I do think, though, when you start stepping up to like a reserve, right, you're not going to get a chronograph watch with a no-name quartz. You're going to get sometimes a Swiss Ronda movement, or sometimes just a regular Ronda movement. But this is a company that makes automatic chronograph, quartz movements. They specialize in that. So what I like about Invicta is that they don't worry about making their own movement. They basically outsource to people who already have the expertise, have been doing it for years, right? Which is what lots of watch companies do. Lots of micro brands do that. That's why the NH35 is so widely used, because it's a reliable automatic movement that works well, and people trust it, right? So again, this is just nonsense. And what I encourage you to do is go to your mall and pick up, a Movado, pick up a Volva. Try to get your hands on Invicta that I'm talking about. Aragon, for the most part, you're going to pick up, most of those watches. And I wish Invicta just made the same quality across all their watches. But there are slight differences, absolutely. But not to the point where one's a piece of dog shit, right? It's just not the case. Like, this is probably in most cases like $100 watch, maybe even sub $100. It's a lot of bang for your buck. If you're looking for a big watch that doesn't break the bank, this is great. This watch is every bit as nice as like a Fossil or a Diesel. Absolutely.
Making a comment about an inanimate object, so please don't get butt mad at me. But if you do get butt...
Why should somebody be allowed to passively aggressive insult people and then don't get mad, don't get butthurt about me? This is the classic passive aggressive bitch, where they're like, oh, I'm not attacking you, or why are you getting so bent out of shape, after they're just spent like 10 minutes insulting what you like. You should get annoyed when people like this try to poke fun at what you like, but still buy what you like.
Mad at me, leave it in the comment section, because each comment helps. Negative.
Yeah, each comment, whether positive or negative, boosts his video. That's why videos like this are put up, to get you to comment. The best way to combat people like this, as soon as you see these, and even while I'm critiquing the video, right, is realistically the best thing to do when you see guys like this that do not review products truthfully, is to just not watch them and don't comment at all. But we all like to comment, so.
If positive, doesn't matter. I get paid either way. Guys.
Yes, he does get paid either way.
I love you. Thanks for hanging out with me. This is kind of, I know it's going to be a controversial episode.
Anyway, I hope you kind of see where I'm going with this and kind of understand that you have to give each watch a fair shake. And no matter what your budget is, there's thousands and thousands of great quality watches. Yeah, are there going to be watches with better quality? Sure. But when I talk about the quality curve, right, the quality does not go like this with price. Price goes like this. Quality does not. Quality goes like this. When you look at really, let's say really entry-level watches, right, like $10, Temu specials. Yeah. The quality between that and, let's say, just like an Oceaniva goes like this. More of a steeper curve up. But then after that, when you start to spend $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $10,000, $20,000, it's ever so slight difference in quality. And ultimately, by the time you get to spending thousands and thousands of dollars on a watch, side by side, if you're being honest and you look at the check boxes that I talk about all the time, you will start to realize that there's not a lot of difference in quality. Are you going to take your watch and put it under 200 times magnification to hope to find a difference? Are you going to unscrew the case back to rationalize why you spent thousands of dollars more on a watch? This is ridiculous. This is crazy thinking. But again, if those things do make you happy, then absolutely buy the watch that costs $10,000. It's your money. Spend it how you want. But just don't make it about quality. Don't spend that money because you think you need to spend that to get quality. Spend that money because you want to rock the Rolex and show it off. Spend that money because you are a guy who, likes to spend money on brand luxury names to showboat. Absolutely. But don't make it about quality because it's just ridiculous. Thanks for watching. Have a fantastic day, folks, and take care.